Hello, greetings, and salutations. Welcome aboard my podcast. I am Jason with Jay's Paradise Travels. Thank you so much for tuning in today. On today's episode, I'm going to go back to talking about some sports games that I've been to in the past. This one's going to specifically focus on some of the smaller schools that I've seen here in the state of Michigan. If you're familiar with college football is divided into different conferences, and within each conference, there's anywhere between 8, 10, 14, 16 teams. Now they've gotten big. Well, one of the conferences, which is a little bit smaller, is called the Mid American Conference, or MAC for short. Within that conference, there are three teams from the state of Michigan: Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Western Michigan. Those teams I have seen all in the past, and I want to talk about my experiences with them today. Now, I won't lie. Initially, I thought about it, and I was thinking, do I really want to talk about the smaller schools? Because as of right now, since there are so many schools, I used to go see both big and smaller schools. And I've actually simplified and just focused on seeing the bigger ones. And the smaller ones, I figure there's enough to see. And I haven't really dedicated any more time and resources towards going towards the smaller ones. But I have seen them in the past, and it's still part of sharing an experience. I also thought about my listeners. There could be my listeners out there who are thinking about going there. Now, whether or not they want to go there to catch a game like I would, they could, it's possible. But some might actually be thinking of attending these universities. Perhaps they're a student and they're being recruited to go play there or to just go there for, a scholarship. Or they're just thinking of attending there in general. And they may want to know a little bit about it. I'm not going to go into talking about the university themselves. I'm talking about going to their football game, but it's still part of that experience of going to college. So there may be some that find this useful, find it helpful, and hopefully, just in general, if you're listening, you find it entertaining, anyways. So I'm going to talk about these three different schools. I'm going to just do it, and I was thinking, should I do it chronologically of when I've seen it, or some other way? I'm actually going to do it alphabetically. So the first one that I'm talking about is going to be Central Michigan. The Central Michigan University Chippewas, that is their name. You'll see like a big C on their logo. I've seen Central Michigan before in the big house. I remember as a fan seeing them. So my first time going there to see them in their home stadium was kind of an interesting one. I'll get into it. Just so you know that they're in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. You may or may not have heard of Mount Pleasant. I don't know, but that's where they're located. And the stadium that they play at is called Kelly Short Stadium. At least that's what it was way back when I saw them. There's a possibility it could have changed names. But usually I've noticed college football stadiums tend to stay the same. NFL, NHL, and those major league ones, they may change names just whoever's the highest bidder. But college stadiums tend to stay the same name. So back when I saw them, it was Kelly Short Stadium. And I will say that this game that I attended, it was just me and my wife Selena at the time. And at this time, we were newly married. We were still within our first year of marriage. So she did attend most games that I went to at that point when we first got married. This was the coldest experience I've ever had at a game in my entire life, and I'll get into it. But anyways, we went there. Now, Mount Pleasant, from where I live, just a little south of Detroit, I want to say it takes probably about hour and a half ish, maybe or so. I can't quite remember, but it was a little bit of drive, and this was on a Thursday. So I remember coming home from work, and we just thought, okay, the game's, we have enough time to get there. A Thursday night game, yeah, let's go do it. Let's go catch these guys and see it. That way, I can say that I've seen it. I can take my pictures and continue on my hobby. So we drive out there, and I remember as we drove out there, stopping at McDonald's and getting a McRib. Just something I remember doing. Um, Not that often I've eaten a McRib, but that was one of the occasions. We got there, and this was a night game, Thursday night game, and this is in the fall time. So temperature had dropped very much. Now we were bundled up. We were bundled up. Um, but it was still pretty cold. Now, I've been to cold games before. In fact, I think temperature-wise, the coldest game I've probably ever attended was the Winter Classic between the Detroit Red Wings and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I work at Michigan Stadium, and so I was actually there to work the game. I wasn't attending it as a fan. And we had to be there about like 4 hours before face-off, for whatever reason. And if you're familiar with that game, if you've ever seen it or at least seen pictures, I mean, we had a snowstorm that came through and it was snowing all the time. It looked pretty cool, from a fan's perspective, maybe if you're watching it on TV. If you're there, it's a lot different. So temperature wise, that probably may have been the coldest, but there were some things that kind of helped with it. For one, where I'm at, I got to actually kind of go inside a little bit for part of the game. Wasn't open up right away, but we eventually did open it up, and that kind of helped. Um, and two, where I was at, I don't have the wind blowing on me, so that kind of is helpful too. So even though temperature wise, that may have, and it was during the day, so you still have, um, the warmth of the sun to a degree. This was a night game. This one that me and my wife attended, the Central Michigan game. It was a night game. Hardly anyone was there. Um, I mean, generally the smaller schools don't necessarily sell out their games. You're not going to see a packed crowd most of the time, unless they're playing a bigger school. If a bigger school comes to a smaller school, you'll see usually a packed house. Ticket prices are pretty high. But if it's a smaller school versus another smaller school, yeah, generally you're not going to get a packed out crowd. Hardly anyone was there as I looked around. The seats were made of metal, which most seats in a college football stadium are. And so without anyone there, without those extra body temperatures, it being a night game, and at nighttime everything gets colder than during the day. No warmth of the sun, no warmth from people, metal, cold seats. It was the coldest experience I ever had at a game. So much so that we eventually, I mean, we stood up. It was hard to even sit down. And the bathrooms provided some warmth. Selena went in the bathroom for a while, would come out and go back. And there was a vendor behind us where we were sitting that had like a barbecue stand, a barbecue pit, whatever you want to call it exactly. He was doing barbecue, and we went back there, and we didn't get any food or anything. But he had an open flame, doing his barbecue, and that provided some warmth. And a lot of the time, we were actually just standing there, I should say, just trying to keep warm from that fire that was going on. Coldest experience at a game in my life, and I've been to some cold games, but definitely that was definitely the most. And I felt sorry for Selena. Selena is not from Michigan. She was born in New York, but mainly raised in Southern California. So, you know, the cold is not exactly something that's up her alley. So I definitely felt bad for her. We were newly married, so she was doing it for my sake. Probably nowadays, that probably, she goes to some games with me, but not as much as before when she was coming to all of them. Anyways, so we were there, but at a certain point we did walk around and just kind of got to see a little bit more of the stadium. Where we were sitting, uh, we were on one of the sidelines, but it walked around. They had like um, a sign there that mentioned the stadium itself, like a little half wall made out of brick. They also had this big Central Michigan University helmet that, if I remember correctly, the players went in and out of. That's how they got in and out of their locker room. That was kind of cool, I guess. We see that. Um, they were playing. They were playing the Ohio Bobcats, and Ohio, pretty much owned them in this game. They started out with like a 14-0 lead. Central Michigan did kind of claw back, and by halftime it was just 17-14 Ohio. Um, and then in the second half, that's when Ohio like really uh, took over, um, and really controlled the game. They scored like 12 points in the third quarter and ended up, you know, they both kind of went and scored a couple touchdowns in the fourth. So the final score ended up being 43-28 Ohio. And This is Ohio Bobcats. And I say that because Michigan fans sometimes do this. I don't. I'm not this Michigan fan, but they will refer to Ohio State as Ohio. I think Brady Hoke did it, and I don't know if anyone did it before then. Some Michigan fans will say that. To me, they are two separate colleges. There's Ohio State and there's Ohio. One's in Athens, one's in Columbus. They are two different places, two different colleges. So when I say Ohio, this is referring to the Ohio Bobcats. Uh, for them, Central Michigan, they had like, I don't want to say not the greatest year that year. They went 8-9. Excuse me, 8-9, 3-9, and this was like their eighth loss. It wasn't quite like the very last game, um, but it was almost one of the last ones. It was late November, Thursday night. Again, very cold, and I don't know if I've ever, besides the Winter Classic, I've ever experienced anything that cold before. Again, Winter Classic, at least at some point, we did get to go inside to be able to get some warmth. That Central Michigan game, we were outside the entire time. And because of me, I don't like leaving games early. It's very, very, very rare that I leave a game early if I don't have to. So I was trying to stick it around. And one of the reasons why, well, first off, I pay for the ticket, I pay for the event, I want to see the entire thing. But another thing is that as time has gone on, I've evolved in my hobby of taking pictures. Part of my hobby is taking pictures of the stadium. Um, Early on in the hobby, I did some things, but as time went on, it evolved to include other things. And one of them, what I like to try to include, if possible, is like a shot of the scoreboard at the end of the game with the final score. So another reason for me to stick around to the end, I want to be able to take a shot of that. So despite it being extremely freezing, we ended up sticking around. Again, poor Selena, felt bad for her. Um, but that was that. So that was the Central Michigan Chippewas. If you are thinking of going to Central Michigan for any reason, maybe to attend the university, go to a game yourself, perhaps your team is going to play Central Michigan and you want to go to the game, go see your team, go play them. Man, maybe you go to Ohio and you're thinking of going up to Central Michigan to see the Bobcats play. I don't know. If you have any reason to go to Central Michigan, let me know. Still, it's part of my job as a travel agent to be able to help you out. So I know it's no cruise involved, but that's okay. You can reach out to me at j.paradise.travels@gmail.com and touch base with me there, or you can reach out to me on either Instagram or Facebook at Jay's Paradise Travels. That's Jays, no apostrophe, Jay's Paradise Travels. So that's Central Michigan. Now we'll go to the next one. The next one, alphabetically, Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan was now a couple years later in 2013. So me and Selena had been married a little bit since, at that time we got married in 2010, by the way. And this one was a lot different of an experience as regards to the weather. Day game, and it was a very pleasant day out. I don't believe we may have had a jacket, that kind of weather. Um, but yeah, just nice blue skies with, partly cloudy or some clouds, just, pleasant day. And this one, if you know Eastern Michigan, or if you've ever never heard of Eastern Michigan, they're called the Eastern Michigan Eagles. They're in Ypsilanti, Michigan. They used to be called the Eastern Michigan Hurons, but that name got changed back in '91, I believe. Maybe it was some controversy along with that. I don't know. But anyways, they're the Eagles now, and they play at Rynerson Stadium. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, it's in Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor, where the University of Michigan is extremely close to each other. I believe they literally are right next to each other. I don't think there's another town or city in between. I think they literally are right next to each other. So very close. But despite that, Eastern Michigan doesn't play Michigan a ton. They played them a couple times, but not like a ton. Anyways, so we went there and we were with a couple friends. So it was me, my wife, and two of my friends. They were brother and sister. And I was actually surprised. The brother, he's always open for anything. One thing I appreciate about him, there's nothing that he feels is beneath him. If you want to do something together and hang out, no matter what it is, he's always been cool with it. His sister, I was actually surprised that she agreed to want to go to a football game. I didn't think that was her thing, but she did. and that was her first ever football game. Now, granted, if you go to your first football game, I mean, it's not like going on a cruise where you want to select a small one, not to be overwhelmed. I mean, I guess you could do that for a game. Um, but the excitement and electricity might not be as much with some of the smaller schools as it would be with the bigger schools. Eastern Michigan, they haven't always had the best football program in the world. So there wasn't a ton of people there, and the electricity of it wouldn't be the same as if your first game, you went to University of Michigan or pick a bigger school, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, pick a big school. I'm referencing that because I'm in the Midwest area. If you're in the South, wherever you are in the South, if you're in Florida, Miami, Florida State, those are bigger schools, right? Texas A&M, Oklahoma. If you're out west, USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, those are bigger schools, right? Those stadiums are going to be packed. They're going to be a lively atmosphere. The smaller schools don't always have that. So if that's your first game, I mean, you definitely shouldn't feel overwhelmed. It almost feels like you're going into a high school game. In fact, I remember when I lived in Houston, they had built a high school stadium that was huge and it cost a lot of money. And I believe it was bigger than Eastern Michigan, if I remember correctly. I mean, high school in the South is humongous, and so again, Eastern their football program isn't huge, and they've had some years where they may have done a little bit better, but by and large, usually they're not always the strongest football program. However, it was still part of my hobby. Still wanted to go see them, and I did. Our friends went with us, and they because there wasn't hardly anyone there, we ended up being able to like basically just go right down to the front seats. I want to say like maybe even 50-yard line front seats. No one else was there. They had a big track around their uh, their field, so there was some distance between us and the players. One of the things that had happened is kind of interesting, maybe, but when I went to buy tickets for them, I bought tickets on their website, you know uh, their college website, and they had this thing where you could buy the ticket, and along with the ticket came hot dog and something to drink. I was going to say pop, but again, if you're not from the Midwest, you might think, what is pop? Pop, how we refer to as soda. Depending on where you are, you may say soda. In the South, they say Coke. In Michigan, we say pop. So I was about to say that, but something to drink. Anyways, hot dog, something to drink, and the ticket. That was all part of it. And it was like a pretty good deal, $10, $15. I don't know, whatever it was. It was pretty inexpensive. So I thought, all right, let's do that. We bought those, got those. Now there was nothing on the tickets that we had gotten that said, here's like a voucher for your hot dog and drink, or nowhere did it say it anywhere. So I was wondering, how are we redeeming this? I don't know. I guess we'll figure it out when we get there. So go to we park next to the stadium, similar to Kelly Short Stadium. We park literally right next to the stadium, um, and just simply walk up to the gates. It's not very difficult at all. We walk up there, we get scanned. So I mentioned about it, asked him about it, and he had referred the guy who was like the ticket taker didn't really know. I think he just said, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You just go over there." Well, I don't know what that meant, but I don't think he knew what it was either. So so we sit down. We didn't get him like right away. We went and sat down. Eventually, it was like, okay, let's go get him. So we go to the concession stand, and they hadn't heard of it. They didn't know about it. They were completely unaware of it. Similar to, I think, the ticket taker. Just, I think he was just trying to get us along. They didn't have anything. Well, this isn't the ticket taker. This is the concession stand. So I'm not just going to walk away. Like, this is what we were doing. Thankfully, now this was back in 20, when did we go there? 2013. So the phone I had, it was a little bit of an older iPhone back then. But thankfully, I was able to pull up the email on my phone and literally show them, here's the email that I got, the receipt, the confirmation, here's the tickets, hot dog, drink. They take it, they're looking at it, still bewildered by it. They get their manager, didn't know anything about this promotion, this deal, but they honored it. They did honor it. I'll give them credit. Even though they didn't know what it was, there's apparently no communication between ticketing and promotions with the concessions, whatever, but they honored it. we got our hot dog and drink. So if you I know it's probably not like the humongous thing in the world, but if you buy a ticket expecting a hot dog and drink with it, you want that hot dog and drink. That's why you bought the ticket, right? So we got that. Anyways, nice day. Um, wasn't overly exciting, especially for like I was thinking about our friend, our first time going. Um, and Eastern Michigan did start off nice. They had a touchdown to start the game, which was cool. They went up, but they didn't get the extra point, so they were only up 6-0. And then within that first quarter, Ball State just took over and scored 27 straight points. They took a 27-6 lead going into the second quarter. Eventually, Eastern did respond, get a touchdown, kind of make it a little bit tighter, 27-13. And then Ball State scored again before halftime and took a 34-13 lead into the second half and kind of ran away with it in the third. Eastern did get one more score, but the rest of it was all Ball State and ended up taking a 51-20 lead into the fourth. And that, surprisingly, after that, no one scored in the fourth quarter. Um, and ended up being the final score of 51-20 Ball State. So good for the Cardinals, bad for the Eagles. Again, they're not always the strongest football team in the world, and again, that's why I was like, well, for your first football game, I guess you get the experience of being there to our friend, but the electricity wasn't there. The home team didn't even win. Maybe we need to take you one of the bigger schools like U of M to to get you another experience at a football game. Whether or not she's ever been to another football game since then, I don't know. But this was their this was a little bit earlier in the season. It was their third loss. They'd started off with a win, I think, against Howard that year. This was their third loss, and that year they went 2-10, so they only had one other win after that. Not the greatest season for them, but it is what it is. So that was Central Michigan that we talked about. Eastern Michigan, and once again, if you're looking to go to Eastern Michigan for whatever reason, maybe you're being recruited there, maybe you want to go see a game, family member, you think about attending Eastern Michigan. I do believe I did go to Eastern Michigan once for a school trip. Yeah, when I was in high school, they thought they were kind of like recruiting people that or saw in the kids, kind of recruiting, if they had potential to be a teacher, because I think they have a good teaching program there to go to school and become a teacher, and they saw that in me, plus some other kids too. So we ended up going there, and I don't remember much of the trip. I remember some things of the trip, but I didn't end up going there. It was a cool field trip. I want to say, did we ever go to Central Michigan on a field trip? For some reason, I thought maybe it was possible I did, but I can't remember. Anyways, if you're thinking of going to Eastern Michigan for whatever reason, a football game, see somebody, you think about attending the university, again, you can reach out to me, let me know. Finally, Western Michigan, the last one there of the three MAC teams. The Western Michigan Broncos, that's their name. And they are in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So Kalamazoo, Michigan is on the west side of the state. Where I'm at here in Detroit, we're more in the southeastern part of the state. Ann Arbor and uh, Ypsilanti, which is where Eastern Michigan plays, are about maybe 30, 45 minutes away, getting closer to the middle of the state. Mount Pleasant is more closer to the center of the state. Western Michigan is on the west side of the state. That's why it's called Western Michigan, right? Eastern Michigan's called Eastern for a reason. More on the eastern side. Their directional names are there for a reason, right? So Kalamazoo is on the west side of the state, and this one was a November game. This was actually senior day for them. If you're unfamiliar with that, what that means, senior day is the last home game for the team. Every year, kids graduate, right? You get a new set of kids coming in. They're only there for 4 years, 3 years, depend. Well, let's just say 4 years. Some leave at 3 years, or in football, it could be 1 year in basketball. But if they stay for their full 4 years, then their last game, which is they're going to graduate, so they can't play anymore. So that's their last game at that field or at that stadium or So they call it Senior Day. So Senior Day is their last home game of every season because there's always going to be seniors in every class. So whoever those seniors are, it's their last game in that building in that stadium. So they make a little bit of to do about it, you know, because they can't get that chance again. You can't go back into college and start playing again. You know, once you've moved on, you've grown up. That's it. Time to move on, right? And whether or not you go into the league or you go do something else with your degree, that's up to you, I suppose. Or you know, but for whatever reason, you know, you can't, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, right? So once it's their last day, it's their last day. So that this was senior day. Uh, and a lot of times that means a little bit more to them. There's a little bit more emotion involved because you get tied to that place if you've been there for 4 years. Um, you know, so there's a little bit of extra feelings with it. Sometimes it's good, the home team wins. Sometimes they don't. You know, it all varies. Anyways, with this particular one, now this was before I got married. This was in 2010. Um, very, I wasn't married yet, and in fact, the night before this game, I actually had gotten into a big fight with my future father-in-law at the time. He may or may not remember this. He may even be listening to the podcast. I don't know. I remember it. And I will say this: I love my father-in-law to death. Since that has happened, uh, I it's all in the past, and I love the man to death and would die for him. But before we got married, me and him didn't always see eye to eye on things, and there was friction between us. And the night before the game, we had a big fight, and so that was weighing on my mind. I don't like confrontation. I'm not a confrontational type of guy. I don't like confrontation. It weighs heavy on my mind and in my stomach. If I do have a fight or argument with somebody, I don't like it. And Kalamazoo is 3 hours away, from Detroit area. So that was weighing heavily on my mind going there, and then eventually coming back. So that was, something that was going on that day. But me and my dad, we were together. It was just me and him, and we went out there. And despite it being on my mind, I'm glad he was able to come, and we had a good time together. My dad, it's not exactly his hobby to go to games, but because he's my dad and he likes being with me and vice versa, he's gone to see a lot of stadiums with me. So even though it's not his hobby, he's probably seen his fair share more than the average Joe. We got out there. We didn't park right next to the stadium like some of those other ones. We actually parked somewhere else and then took a shuttle over. And while we were there, the shuttle driver had referred to he heard the cannons going off. So apparently at Western Michigan, they have cannons that go off when they score something. Not every stadium does that. Um, but with Western Michigan, they did. So with that, it was like, okay, they must have scored already. And they did. By the time we got there, Western Michigan was already on the board. Western Michigan must have really played inspired that day because they did pretty well. They scored to take a 7-0 lead. Kent State did kick a field goal in the first quarter to make it a 7-3 game going into the second. And then from there, it was all Western Michigan. 10 points in the second quarter to take a 17-3 lead going into half. Another touchdown in the third to make it 24-3. And then two more touchdowns in the fourth to really drive the score up. 38-3 was the final. Western Michigan blew out Kent State Golden Flashes. This game with them of the three, it was the only one that won. They had the best record out of the other two from these, what I've seen during those years. They went 6-6. That was their fifth win. They did get another win the next week on the road to make 6-6 to go 500. In college football, usually you need 6 wins in order to become bowl eligible. They became bowl eligible, but they weren't selected for a bowl game. One of the things I thought was pretty interesting, aside from the cannons, which I did get to hear quite a bit, we sat where we sat. We were kind of like in a corner of an end zone, and to the left of us, you could see like the student band, and I think the student section was over there too. We did eventually kind of make our way over there. I think near the end of the game when people had kind of filed out. Not that it was super packed anyway, but we had went there and kind of sat there. And then on the other end zone, looks like a big barn. I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe some sort of athletic facility. I don't know. There's that on the other side of the other end zone. But then on the other side, or not the student section was, they have a hill, and on that hill they set up seating, which I thought was really cool, really unique. Um, they had people that were sitting over there, and so usually, I mean, there's always incline in seating, in a stadium, right? So that people in the further rows can see the game. There's always an incline to it that usually is built, but this wasn't necessarily built. It was built on a hill. So I thought that was really cool, really unique. Again, Central Michigan had that big Central Michigan football that the team went in and out of. That was unique to that stadium. At Ryerson, nothing humongously unique, but I remember in one of the end zones, I mean, they had this humongous Eastern sign on it, big bold letters. You could see that. And then at Western Michigan, now their stadium's called Waldo Stadium. I failed to mention the name of the stadium, Waldo Stadium. Uh, where's Waldo? I think of that. Waldo Stadium, something that was unique with them was that they had the seating that was on the hill, literally built on a hill. I thought that was really kind of cool and different. So, again, if you want to go see Western Michigan, let me know. If you want to go see Eastern or Central, let me know. You can reach out to me at j.paradise.travels@gmail.com. You can reach out to me that way, or you can look me up on Instagram or Facebook. Jay's, Jays, no apostrophe, Jay's Paradise Travels, and you can reach out to me that way too. Or if you're looking to go see any other game or go on a cruise, don't let that be a DIY project. Reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you. Please feel free to like, rate, subscribe, share, all those good things that podcasters need in order to keep our podcast going. We need those interactions so that we can continue to grow the channel. So I'm no exception. I needed to. So continue to ask that you do that. But definitely appreciate you listening today. Hope you liked it. Hope you learned something from it. And maybe it whetted your appetite to go see something. And if it's so, let me know. All right, guys. It was good talking with you, and I will talk to you later. Bye bye.